is the minutes of the January meeting.
2 corrections on those. I have been misspelling Stewart consistently, so we're going to remedy that. And also there was a mistake in section G1, new business, where I wrote down Paul instead of Dave. So those 2 corrections will be made before they're filed.
Thank you.
Give me for a moment. I have a technical error here. There we go. Oh, yeah.
Where'd you go?
I was hiding. I didn't want you to see my making faces because I realized I had the agenda from January. I was getting kind of ticked off at myself. Too many pieces of paper floating around. My apologies. Yeah, so much of the time today has been just absorbed with trying to figure out which way is up with a meeting and how to make sure we had the ability to meet, and posting the fact that we weren't meeting at town hall. And Paul just informed me that the Bowen brothers are at town hall, and I had posted a specific notice. That's one of the things the town hall doesn't have in Tiverton, is any kind of exterior posting board. So if you can't get into town hall, you're out of luck. You should maybe mention that to them, but that's not on our agenda. So the minutes, though, of the January 18th, 2020 meeting, have people reviewed them, and do they have any corrections or comments other than misspelling of poor David's name?
Yeah, and section G1, just those 2 for me.
I make a motion to accept them as they are.
Do I have a second?
A second.
Okay, and because we got to do roll call votes in Zoom, we'll do it from the bottom. Bill Thompson.
Present, here.
You're agreeing with the motion?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Charles Lawrence.
Aye.
Phyllis.
Aye.
Deb.
Aye.
Paul, are you with us yet? I guess he's not with us yet. Okay, Dave Stewart.
Yes, aye.
And Bruce Cox. And so it passes unanimously of those present. Okay. Correspondence. We have the email from Mr. Ramatowski relative to the Fogland boat ramp, which is being discussed later on. And then there's the memorandum of understanding regarding 451 Seapowet Avenue's mooring locations for Clemens. And Bill had offered to read this into the minutes, and that's perfectly fine by me. You care to do that, Bill?
Sure, happy to. Should I do that now?
Absolutely.
Okay. What I'm reading is a letter addressed to Michael Marcello, Chris Cotta, Tyler Loomis of January 24th, 2022, regarding 451 Seapowet Ave. Good morning, all. Per our recent discussions and meeting, it is my understanding as follows, that we have agreed that the riparian boundaries of Mr. Clemens' property located at 451 Seapowet Ave will be drawn from the edges of the coastal features of the property, i.e. the point at which the property interfaces with the submerged lands of state out to the channel. I have attached as Exhibit 1 a survey of the property with the riparian boundaries and the appropriate coordinate points of the riparian lines. Accordingly, Mr. Clemens will be permitted to locate his moorings anywhere within this area, so long as the location is in accordance with CRMC's riparian rights guidelines, specifically CRMC's written guidance dated May 20th, 2019. Accordingly, and with this understanding in place, the current appeal of the request and the request of the Harbormaster to Mr. Clemens to move his moorings shall both pass off the agenda of the Tiverton Harbor Commission agenda. At the same time, Mr. Clemens will be submitting an application to the town to move one mooring closer to his property, The new position of this mooring will be, and they list the coordinates. This will be in line with the approximate center of the property located at 451 Seapowet Ave. And so long as all other aspects of the application are complete, this location shall be approved by the Harbormaster. And there was a follow-up letter from the solicitor, Mike Marcello, saying, and this was addressed to Tyler. It says, Tyler, we have reviewed the letter and the MOU, and it accurately reflects the resolution of this matter as it was discussed a few weeks ago. Hopefully this resolves your client's concerns. Mike Marcello. And that's it.
Right. So that brings that to conclusion. This is an appropriate location for this, although it's not on our agenda. I could bring it up perhaps in public comment, which we sort of blew by. I apologize. We received a correspondence dated February 17th from Coastal that was actually addressed, and I only received this today, to Bradley Bowinger and Travis Lundgren, that their request to Ben Godich, of CRMC Aquaculture Coordinator on February 16th, their Coastal Resource Management Council application has been withdrawn without prejudice for them to be able to file it again. And that was a letter signed by Jeffrey Willis. I'll submit it in next month's agenda just as correspondence received. So I apologize. Could we go back to the public comment section at this point in time? I believe that Mr. Bohamer or Mr. Lundgren was actually was talking at the beginning of the meeting. Andrew, can you see him? Can you identify them and let them in? And 617-719, there we go. You're okay, Brad, you're now up and live.
Yeah, great. This will be all audio.
Yes. Audio
Okay.
and your video if you have it, but yes.
Okay. Yeah, that would be nice, but I don't quite see a button. Maybe I'm not permitted in this webinar or not. But yeah, if you guys can hear us, I'm with Travis Lundgren as well. We submitted a letter last week declaring our withdrawal of our application. Through a lot of discussion with the CRMC, we decided to be best to, mostly because they have redesigned, which I think our application kind of helped prompt this change, but they redesigned their aquaculture application process. And we figured we would try to kind of start from scratch with you guys and reapproach. And obviously there's a lot more outreach that's kind of happened and a lot more public notice that's very visible. And there's been a lot of talk about wanting aquaculture and supporting it, but not necessarily in certain locations. And we figured we'd try to, and obviously it doesn't need to make any progress this evening, but we just figured we wanted you guys to hear from us that we're moving, and would like to get as much input from you guys going forward if it seemed like a good idea to reapproach this.
Well, thank you. Are you through?
Yeah, that's all.
Okay, thank you very much, Brad. Thank you for your commentary. You're not on our agenda, so we really can't discuss it too much tonight at this point. But thank you for your commentary and wish you all the best of luck. Any other public comments at this point in time? I'm trying to become, looks like Don Libby's there. Yeah,
Evening.
hand up. Hi, Don.
How are you all?
Good, Don.
I'm glad you went back to the public comments. I'm just curious as to whether or not you've received any feedback from the solicitor with respect to your request of last month.
No, I have not. I have not received any comment back from him, other than he was going to raise the issue with the attorney for CRMC, Anthony DeSisto.
And did
But
he,
I've heard nothing. If I had heard something, it would have been brought to the attention of the commission.
okay, and was there any particular reason he would be speaking to CRMC's attorney?
That's his first reach out to see if what their feeling was. And, you know, it would be, if the CRMC came back and said, we feel that riparian mooring has a priority under the Constitution of Rhode Island and under our regulations, would have sort of been a no-brainer. If he came back and said, we feel that aquaculture is the highest thing, it would have been perhaps a different issue. I don't know. So he did not. That's what he said.
Okay, thank you.
Any other public comments? Let's see if I've gotten a little bit better about this Zoom thing. I figured out there's attendees and not just panelists. I guess there are no hands raised. Okay. So now we can slide that back down over here. Now, the email from Tom Marinkowski was one thing that we submitted to you relative to we'll take that up later. Unfortunately, because all the fiasco with regards to Zoom, no Zoom and whatnot, we obviously didn't have our special subcommittee meeting and whatnot, or we can identify dates for the future and process of sharing and whatnot. I didn't know if the HMP subcommittee wanted to make any kind of report at this point in time.
My feeling is that it's best to discuss that as a separate meeting. There's really nothing to report since sending out the draft. I will say that I have received some feedback from the community that I can share with you guys, and then discuss when we get together to talk about it.
Okay. And so while we're in a public environment, anyone have any particular, I'm talking with Clint at one point last week when he told me about the memorandum of understanding and such, and I added it on the agenda. And I mentioned the possibility of having to do Zoom for the HMP workshop. He thought that was great, was his response, quite honestly, because he liked it, I gather. What are other people's feelings on that? You like the idea of working on the HMP as a document that can be shared and we work through it on a Zoom basis? Or would you rather do it in person? I still, by the way, have to find out if we can meet in person and still not be, and still be in compliance rather with the current governor's current decision. Because I, quite honestly, didn't have any time today to review it. I was too busy trying to get answers and getting notice out that we weren't meeting by hybrid.
I like the Zoom format. What I don't think will be productive is doing the work on a shared doc. I don't think it was really productive when we tried it before. And since everybody has the current draft and the previous draft and the time to kind of organize thoughts and input, my personal opinion is that if that could be shared in a way that allows us to then, shared and discussed in a way that allows us to have another round of changes in light of that input, and then to bring it back to everyone for review again. I mean,
in a Zoom format, Deb, or in a
the format doesn't matter to me so much. I mean, just personally for me, the Zoom thing is easy because it's just easier. Like Seth has a work obligation tonight, so at least the kids don't have to be home alone. So it's so selfishly, I favor the Zoom format. So, but I'll do what everyone feels is best. My concern is more over doing it on the shared document again. I didn't feel like that was terribly productive.
I think we were at a lot of technological steps to be done, and there certainly were distractions that evening.
Yeah, well, just like the line by line syntax. I mean, I think right now, like what we really need is input on the ideas and the formatting, and not necessarily like if each word is perfect.
Mhm. Anybody else? Zoom versus non-Zoom. I'd
I
say
like
a little
Zoom.
consensus here.
I like the Zoom idea. I also think maybe we've already done this or asked for this feedback, but if commission members could come up with suggestions about specific things in the harbor management plan and submit them so we could, rather than, I know we're not going to go line by line through the whole document, but if we had an idea, like for example, if Paul wrote in and has some things to add to rights of way and that kind of thing.
All right. Okay, anyone else? Chip, how do you feel about it?
In general, I prefer to meet face to face, and I like it, especially if it has something you need to communicate directly when you have a whiteboard over trying to do it over such things. But from my point of view, I'm much more comfortable until COVID comes down to about 1 in 5,000, 1 in 10,000, doing it on Zoom.
There you go. David, Stewart.
I think Zoom format. I think if we can make it work on the Zoom format, it seems to be pretty comfortable with everybody.
Yeah.
Phyllis?
Either way is fine. Zoom is good, in person's fine.
I'm either way, and I'd just like to try it on Zoom for at least to take a shot at it. Okay, so dates next week, because this week, I don't have time enough to put out the notice, because I have to put out a notice minimum of 24 hours in advance of any meeting we have. And I have meetings tomorrow night and Thursday night, joy for joy. So what are people looking at with regards to next week, the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd?
I can do this. I could do either of those. The 2nd or the 3rd's preferable.
Anyone else?
I can't do
This
the
is
3rd.
for an evening meeting, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that was Paul saying the 3rd does not work for him, I believe.
I didn't hear Paul.
3rd
Okay.
doesn't work for me.
Okay, you gotta speak up a little bit, Paul.
Yep.
Sorry. 3rd doesn't work for Paul. 2nd is you like, Deb. How's this? Does 2nd work for people?
Yep, I could do the 2nd.
Yes.
I'm looking at my
Make it
calendar.
work.
Okay, I will notice a HMP meeting for 3/2.
I can't do, what were the dates?
It was Wednesday the 2nd, or it was 1, 2, or 3. And Deb was preferring 2, which is a Wednesday evening. Paul has a prior commitment for Thursdays.
Yeah, I have a prior commitment for Wednesday and Thursday, 6 to 9 PM.
I can do the 1st. I can do Tuesday. It's fine.
Okay,
I can do Tuesday as well.
everyone else, how's the 1st work for you, Bill and Dave?
Yeah, I can do the 1st also.
I can do the 1st.
Sorry, Deb.
That's okay. It's okay.
It's like next week.
That's next week. The month she is gone.
Yeah.
Astounding, isn't it? It happens faster and faster. Okay, so I will notice a HMP meeting for the 1st. Do we want to start at 6:30, 7 o'clock? What time?
6:30 is good with me.
Yeah, earlier is good for me.
Yeah.
6:30.
Okay,
That works.
I can do it earlier.
good. I'll do it up for 6:30. And, all right. So we've done that. Chip, have you been able to get a hold of anybody at National Grid with this lovely weather that we've been having? And they obviously have nothing going on, right?
Yeah, I learned, well, we'll get to that when we get to sea level rise.
Okay, you want to, we got up on the D, the sea level rise, but I have it, that is a separate element on the.
Yeah, I can wait till it's the right time.
All right, well, why don't we jump, we're all over the place on this agenda. I'm sorry, I was distracted by the evening news and our good friend over in the, not the quite too far east, what he's doing. So I didn't come in here and get myself organized and well enough in advance. I do apologize for you, for everyone, for that. While we talk about sea level rise now, Chip, and bring in the flood traps at that point.
Yeah, well, so I have still not gone. I'm waiting to get to that 1 in 5,000, 1 in 10,000 before I go see the fire chief and the police chief, sitting in a room regardless. If I don't have to go, like the pharmacy, I'm not going, and I always wear a mask. So
Have you been able to have you been able to tie in with Jacques Afonso at National Grid or anybody like that? Just a phone call or anything?
Actually, I have some. So my daughter is now working for the New Jersey Power Authority.
Mm-hmm.
And excuse me. And so they've done a lot about trying to get offshore wind going. And it's a lot more complicated than it appears. So they have a couple of plants like we have, like Massachusetts has Brayton Point. That's pretty easy. But when you're out of those, then bringing more power to shore gets complicated. And you got to get it to a place where it can be distributed. So the natural solution is to take it to where there's was an existing power plant, even if it's further inland. And so in Rhode Island, that's relatively easy because it's such a small state, right? But so that has a major impact. And I'm not, so as I understand it, those offshore developers, we already have some who already have on their way a project accepted to come into Quonset. So if that one falls through, it's a whole complicated of a hierarchy. So when you put it in, puts you in line, but then you have to meet certain criteria. If you're not, it bumps to the next one. It's a whole complicated thing. So at any rate, I learned that from her. And no, I haven't contacted National Grid, but I will put it in my calendar. I haven't done that today. I have a personal experience with National Grid. We wanted 20 extra panels in order to run the EV we have. And it was back and forth between us and Solar Power and National Grid five or six times before finally we got it approved. So I don't have a good starting impression of National Grid.
Okay, well, this gentleman, Jacques Afonso, when I spoke to him prior to COVID, he seemed reasonably receptive.
Okay.
If you need me to dig out his phone number again and such, I can. So it's not a problem. Okay. Aquaculture ordinances. I hope everyone received the draft aquaculture ordinance. I don't know if we're in a position to talk about it this evening. We'll tail that in with the harbor management plan. It is a pretty exhaustive document, but I think it's a very full, if I can use that word, first draft that we can approach from that perspective. As they say, it's always easier to back off than it is to go forward sometimes. So be thorough. Next item on the old business is the BYC docks. The town of Bristol got them. They understandably had priority over the town of Tiverton as it related to the Bristol Yacht Club. So we lost out on that. On to new business, Stonebridge Docks. Dave and I went before the town council, and I'll let Dave explain what went on with that and what we now need to do. You can see what's going on there. And I meant to do something today that I didn't. Apologize about pictures of ideas. Go ahead, David. It's all yours.
I think we had a pretty good meeting with the town council. Bill Rivera was there at our support, and he had a good handle on what's going on. And I think Donna too. We're making progress, and we certainly don't have all the answers. I sent a memo to Stu Gaffield, I guess it is, with the recreation department, because I think we want to get him involved, or his committee. We want to get the planning involved, and we want to get the economic development. And I went in front of Renee's board 2 weeks ago, and they seem to be pretty receptive. I think, there's just a lot of unanswered questions how we do it. I think everybody thinks it's a good idea. We've got the resource, exactly how we handle it. I think there's enough other spots around like Bristol and Newport that have done certainly the dinghy storage, the kayak storage. We've got the docks, the floats. We want to assign and figure out a way to get the residents to rent the spots. In Newport, they do a lottery, which seems to work pretty well. I think it's moving forward. I just think probably some sort of a subcommittee with a representative from Recreation, from EDC, and from the planning board, we could probably start to make some pretty good headway. Again, I really don't think we've had a lot of pushback on it. I just think there's a lot of details we have to, the signage we have to do. As far as the piece of land, we want to try and put the kayak racks on. Somebody from, I think it was the EDC, said that they thought the town actually owned that piece of property. We bought it for $1 or something, but there's a lot of details that have to be ironed out. And I think the best thing to do would be try to get 4 committees to get together with that as a specific goal and iron it out. I don't think there's anything that's impossible to do. It's the biggest thing is we've already got the docks, they're in place, and everybody I talk to seems to be in favor of it. So I guess I'm waiting to hear from Stu. I think Renee was pretty receptive to it. I haven't heard anybody from the planning board, so I don't know who to contact there, but that's pretty much the way I see it. I think it's positive, but we do have a lot of details to work out.
Well, any questions of David?
Just out of curiosity, who collects the fees? This would be run by the town with our oversight?
Yeah, well, I think that's where the recreation comes in. I mean, it's kind of the same deal. You wouldn't really be collecting fees other than for the rental of the slips. I mean, other than that, there's not going to be, and also for the kayak slips. That's going to be something. It's not like a day-to-day. It's not like
okay.
Beach.
I knew that.
Okay, there'll be a time frame where they go on sale or go for rent, and anybody who wants one, and I guess there'd be a beginning and an end to that. And as far as the dinghy racks or the kayak racks, kind of a similar thing. And, that's a detail we'd have to iron out. I certainly don't think it's a problem. They send a check to the town and get a sticker and go to the DEM or I don't know. That's
and the town would advertise this. I think it's a great idea. It's all wonderful. I'm just.
We would have to. We'd have to put memos out, and I think certainly the Secana Times could do something. I think there's a social media things like Tiverton happenings and all these things that I think the word would get out. I think that there's a definite need for it. Kenny at Standish said he could rent his dinghy spots 3 times over. And so I don't think there's any problem there. The kayak racks, you build one and, it's not a big deal. And most of them hold probably, start with one that holds only 10 boats. And again, it's gradual. And again, then the other thing we'd like to do possibly is get some floats that we're hoping to get from Bristol, that type of float that we could put along the waterfront to, there'd be dinghies in the water, there'd be kayaks and racks, and then there'd be dinghies that you'd pull up like an inflatable or something that's not going to have you pull up. And again, this isn't happening overnight, but what we need is a plan, and then phase 1, phase 2, and work towards the plan. And the ideal thing would be to get the dock squared away so we'd have transient boats that could come in for a 2-hour limit or something on the west side, dinghy residents on the east side. Then, eventually down the road, possibly the police boat and the fire boat to be at the end, all safely stored. The kayak racks could be there, and you could eventually do small boat floats. So, again, it's just, the biggest thing is we got the floats in, we got the ramps in, we got the pilings in, and we got through DEM or CRMC. That was the biggest hurdle. The rest of it, really, it's just, a lot of it's just bookkeeping, and so.
Yeah, what I found interesting when we were talking with the town council is the sense that they felt that the rental of the space, for instance, for kayaks would be something in the recreation board's field versus our field, which is fine. All monies that come in from any payment of use of town facility, whether it be a mooring fee, which is we're authorized to collect by our authority from coastal, or a rental of a tie-up spot on the dock, all the money goes to the general fund. It's not pigeon marked for any particular entity. I mean, we all have to submit our budgets. We all get money from the town. One of the perpetual complaints Harbor Commission has in most towns is we bring in all this money and we don't get to get it all. And so one of those, too bad, you make money for us. So the issue here is we need to develop, I want to, as Dave said, a small subcommittee. I'd like to think 2 people from us could reach out to the rec committee and also with Renee to see what how you get funding for this. And one of the interesting things, Paul, you'll find this interesting. They were saying that the recreation was either recreation or outdoor space, I forgot which one right now, is actually supposedly overseeing all rights of way in town. Now, did they mean rights of way to the water? That wasn't very clear, but they said all rights of way, and there are a lot of those in town. So, I mean, the issue is not who gets the money, the town gets the money. The issue is how do we put this together as from an operational perspective. We put the dock in the water and got the facility going. Quite candidly, many of you don't realize is that the Harbor Commission is the entity that really pushed for the Stonebridge abutment to get moving forward, get the federal funding for it. And then quite honestly, at one point had to run after the federal funding because it was for a while mysteriously disappearing and then it came back. So I would like to, Dave is, asked Dave to spearhead the effort to get the dock system in place and whatnot. I'd like to keep him involved. He was the kayak guy under the bridge for so many decades. I don't know if one of our newer members, Phyllis or Bill, would like to be on that with him. And then you guys can start working on the issues, identifying the issues like the signage, and then coordinating with the town to see who should in fact be in charge of managing it and then how we put it together. Any volunteers? How come everyone's screen went blank? I don't understand.
Hey, Bruce, this is Tyler. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Should I be on that subcommittee too? Because I mean, it's probably going to come down to me managing the dock, seeing it's on the water.
Yeah,
I think
definitely.
you're probably very, very true point, Tyler. I think it's a good point.
And I can help Dave.
Okay,
That'd be great. That'd be great. No, I'd really, it'd be good. I mean, I think we've got the thing rolling, and no, Tyler, yeah, you'd be definitely involved. I mean, you know, without a doubt. And I just, like I said, I'm waiting to hear from Stu from Recreation, and possibly Renee can get somebody on her department. Again, I don't know who the planning board people are. Is that Stu Hardy?
No, I think it's Stu, because he lives right next door. Stu Gilfillan.
Yeah.
Stu Gilfillan is recreation. Stu
He's
Harding is planning board.
Okay. Well, I know Stu Harding too. So we got two.
Yeah, so Stu Harding is planning.
Right. So I did send a message on Sunday to Stu Gilfillan, whatever, and
Gilfillan, yeah.
Gilfillan, and I'd be happy to contact Stu Hardy. He used to be on the Harbor Commission, I believe, years ago. But
it might be helpful if you also had a little organizational meeting with Chris Cotta, because he'd be able to bring a overview from a standpoint of operations as to who would be responsible for what element of this. I think we're obviously all the people on the water, but then the kayaks and or the boat dinghy tie-ups and whatnot. You know, someone told me last night, oh, he knows a lot about boats. Okay, fine. I didn't know that. But just the same, there are ways of operating the tie-ups for the dinghies and then managing the kayaks and such. So you may want to touch base with Chris Cotta. I think that'd be very beneficial.
Well, Chris, you and I actually met with Chris, and I know Chris is very, as far as it's concerned, he understands, appreciates the waterfront, and I think wants to try to maximize the residents' experience with it. So, no, I'll speak with Chris.
One thing that I'd like, Renee can maybe help us figure out, because I went on the website you referred me to, Renee, regarding the, the Quonset development infrastructure grants that's available. And it seemed like they were looking for monstrous size things, and we're not that. We'll never be that. Don't want to be that. But I would, to do an engineering study of the area and maybe apply to coastal for what is known as a Marina perimeter permit, which is a area, it's a perimeter around your docks, around the area that you control, that they say, all right, we don't want you coming back and bothering us for every little thing you might have doing here. Define it, design it, and then we'll review it and either give it our stamp of approval or maybe adjust it so that in the future, we don't always have to go running back to them. And so that, and engineering is not cheap. I mean, quite candidly, we got the bargain of the decade with the dock structure. The invoice came in, it was $10,000 and a change, and there's tons of volunteer time in that. So can you help on that, Renee, to guide us as to how we get engineering money?
You can basically do what the EDC wound up having to do when we went, we had to go and put in a grant for, we went in and put a grant for the business park, which we haven't heard about yet. But basically what we did was, well, you're talking about a perimeter study and an engineering plan. So your grant would have to that would be your goal for your grant, that you're looking for an engineering study because you're looking to develop a certain portion of the Tiverton waterfront. And that because it's the waterfront and you're dealing with resiliency issues and you're dealing with coastal management issues, you need an expert in waterfront engineering to help you with that. I mean, so you're the experts in terms of how you would word that. The grants would go to places like Quonset. I could help you figure out where to send your grants. But in terms of the actual picking out the topic and picking out what's the kernel that you need first, that's when I think what the town council actually was talking about when they said you need a plan. And I think when people start talking about developing the waterfront, it even helps to have a picture of what a kayak rack looks like. People don't know what that looks like. People don't know what it means to, you're all familiar with tying up boats, but what is that going to look like when, how many boats you're going to have and what's that going to look like? That's what I think what was happening with the town council when they said that you needed to have a plan, because in your heads, you all know what it is, but for a lot of people, they don't. So two things. Developing a plan is like picking out what we had to do when we did our grant. We had to come up with, okay, what's the first step that we want to do? What's the very first thing that we have to look at? And we were developing a phase-in program for the business park. Like I said, grants don't always come through. We're still waiting to find out if we even got our money. But the first step is to develop your phase-in plan, and what are the things that you need to have there for your plan to go forward. Is it CRMC approval? Is it DEM? I don't know. Which you're the group that knows, has access and has that information. So that would be what would go into your grant. Then from there, we would look at sources. I can call up, Greater Newport. We can call up Connect Greater Newport. We can call up the Greater Newport Chamber, and they would help us find grants that might be applicable, because that's what they're good at. But first, we have to have at least an idea of what kind of plan you want to get money for, because that'll determine where you go for money. Clearly, you don't go for preservation, the arts preservation for a marine plan. So that's why you have to have a good sense of what you're looking for.
Good. I mean, that's kind of the information we need from possibly, gather from a subcommittee. And, what
Right.
we're looking for is Bristol and Newport all have kayak racks. I'm on the waterfront committee at two different yacht clubs, and I can take pictures and the rules and regulations that we impose,
Exactly.
all of those things, and how long a boat could, maximum boat, how long the painter line should be, how far apart they should be, how big a kayak rack needs to be, and that stuff's it's all. They're pretty.
It's all the little nitty gritty stuff that they're going to be looking for. That's exactly what you need to do.
Well,
exactly.
We can get all that. That's all very available. And
Okay.
I think a survey of the waterfront to know really the true depths and what we own, what the town actually owns that we can use. And if the town doesn't own it, will the state let us use it? I mean, so these
Right.
are, we just have to sort of.
Right. I agree.
Beautiful.
All right, so now we have a little subcommittee put together. Dave, you're gonna start reaching out to people to put that together and develop a plan of attack regarding the idea of kayak racks, both at Stonebridge and down at Fogland, because I can't imagine you don't have to reinvent the wheel to go down the Fogland.
My only concern with Fogland is that it's awfully isolated, and those kayaks could be stolen very easy. I mean, where they are down at, if you look at where they are in Bristol, they're all in, the parks. They're all in places with lots of light. They're Union Street. They're at the Independence Park. And same with Newport. They're at Kings Park, and they're at spots down at the end of Fogland.
We're all in places with cameras. There's cameras.
Well, cameras are so, a decent kayak is going to be $500, and if any, I don't know. It'd be nice to have them down there, but my only thought is, it's responsible for anybody that rents a spot. They're doing it at their own risk, and the town's not responsible. They're supposed to lock them up. They're supposed to do that. That's
exactly. Just because there's a risk associated with doing something doesn't mean you don't do it. I ski way too fast and I enjoy it, but I'm aware of the risks. And as a result, I ski more slowly now that I've gotten older. But the fact that a kayak could be stolen, motors and boats are stolen from right underneath people's noses, not with regularity, but on occasion. And so I don't think the risk of theft down at Fogland is enough of a deterrent. It might be the end result is enough of a deterrent that it's a waste of time and the racks have to be relocated. But if you don't want to bother with taken, I just think that's a worthy thing to look at.
Oh, it'd be great.
Maybe Paul Duarte take a look at that.
Yeah.
But,
No, it'd be a great spot. We used to do a lot of tours out of there. So,
All right, so the other thing that we discussed with the town council, and it's on the new business here, is the pursuit of storefront grants for possible coordination with the EDC to address the Cumberland Farms eyesore. It's the Cumberland Farms building. And again, Renee is sitting there in the corner. I appreciate you being here, Renee, very much.
I think that's something I have to bring up myself with the EDC commission in terms of how they feel we should go approaching this. It's really going to have to be a carrot approach, because there's, there's nothing in any of the town ordinances that talk about what the outside of a building looks like. We don't have anything like that. So it really is something that we have to, as we did with the dollar store, talk to them about, could it look more like this or could it look more like that? So I have to bring that up before our own EDC and get some input from them about how they want to approach this before I start doing anything on that.
Yeah. I do. I have the guy's name, and I've talked to him. He's works out of the office in Western Mass. His name is Ron. I've got it right here. Ron, Ikkola, and he is in charge. He's a senior real estate guy, and he said,
"Could you do the last? Could you spell it's Ron what?"
His first name is Ron. Last name is Mikkola, and I have his phone number.
Okay.
Mikkola. His phone number is 508 270 44.
270.
Yeah, 508-270-4486.
Okay.
And I spoke to him several times, and it's about being a corporate citizen, and it's about cleaning that place up. And that they've done so many of the other places, like down on Broadway. And somebody said, well, they have to be the ones with gas. Well, the one on Broadway, right near right across from the police station, doesn't have gas. It's almost the exact same size as the one we have. And several years ago, they dressed it all up in the new colors and the new this, and it looks, it looks really nice. And their signage is much more, the one we have now couldn't look tackier. The post is rusty. This has been there forever. I walked by there the other day, and the main sign in front of the place looks like it's going to fall over. It's a dump. And, I think we got to put pressure on them that it's, if you want to be corporate citizens and you want to be part of the community, because the place generates a lot of income for them. It's the curbing, they could plant. And the thing is, we're not talking structural, we're talking cosmetic, and, I bet you could get that place spruced up for 20 grand and make it look really nice. And, I think we got to almost shame them into it. And, I'm happy to keep bugging this guy and just tell him the place looks like hell. Why don't you do something? And maybe we got to let it as the editor and start that way. But it's, it's just, and they've got more money than God. They've got a ton of money. So it's just a question of the old squeaky wheel. And I think we've got to really start squeaking. So, and I'm happy to keep hounding this guy.
You can go ahead and hound him yourself. I think, but I will.
I will.
I think what I have to do is talk to, because we have to have an approach. It's not just Cumberland Farms. We also have on our plate that we're supposed to be working with North Tiverton in terms of getting some of the stores there to work on their storefronts and dressing that up as well. So I think what we have to do is look at an approach for businesses in general and sort of bring them in along with it, because there's such they're right across from the beach, and maybe that would be the way to approach them. But I have it down, and I'll bring it up with the EDC at our next meeting.
Yeah, no, because it's it really is the sore point there. The beach looks great. Grinnell's beach looks great. The abutment, the docks coming around, all the homes around there are coming there. The Red Dory has fixed up his place. It's just, I think we, like I say, if there's nothing else, we shame them into it.
We'll give it a shot.
It's worth it. Nothing ventured, nothing gained.
Right. Okay. I'm doing this consistently tonight. The agenda.
Dave, I think it's a great idea, just by the way, and I'm happy to squeak along with you.
Good. No, I think, if we get some citizens, like, again, maybe even an article in the paper to get the residents to boycott the joint for a while. I mean, I don't know. One way the corporate catches their attention is if it starts to affect their pocketbook and might say, geez, maybe we ought to clean this place up.
Yeah. Well, it might benefit them profit-wise.
It can't hurt. I mean, it can't hurt. And they are extremely wealthy, and they've got this formula they're doing all of the places. And, it's all in kind of a grayish and a green. And they could do that place so easy.
Or maybe a side-by-side picture of the one that looks good in that one.
Well, I've got tons of pictures of it, and he knows. I mean, he runs a lot of stores, but I'm gonna stay on him. He's gonna get sick of hearing from me.
Could you do me a favor? If you can email me a couple of the pictures of the ones you're talking about, just because I've not seen them. I don't know.
Definitely. That's Renee.
That's Renee. Yeah.
Yeah. I will have them to you by the end of the week.
Okay, thanks.
All right, on to the next issue, item 4, passed motion, action, and follow through, discussion and possible vote. This was an issue raised by Deb. Deb, if you want to talk about this, please.
Yeah, I wanted to put this on here in response to a motion that was made at the last meeting. It was about removing the rocks, the submerged rocks off of Jacques Island to restore that as a boat ramp. And and please correct me if I missed it, but the motion was made without really a plan about how to take it to the town council. And I made the assumption then that since Donna and Bill were in attendance, that they would bring it. And the assumption was incorrect on my part. And so I just wanted to put it out there, much like Dave is doing with the dinghy docks, to make sure that the plan is presented along with the motion and that it's followed through on, because that motion went through, but no one followed up on it. No one's reporting back on it. And I just want to make sure that the things we're spending the time to talk about don't get lost that way.
Well,
Go ahead.
It seems a little premature because we still haven't even gotten to the point where DPW is getting any kind of assent from CRMC retroactively for what they've already done. And then now we're jumping ahead to removing boulders, and we don't even know. I know Clint said that the NOAA chart says it's a boat ramp. People that have been around longer than me in that neighborhood said it never really was a boat ramp. Yeah. I know Paul knows more about this than I do. But it just seems like we haven't solved the first problem. We haven't even come up with a plan or a coordination with CRMC about how to improve Two Rod Way. And
yeah, I agree. And, and my concern was more of the, not necessarily that specific thing, but just in general, that when we have ideas for a plan to accompany them, if we're going to vote on whether or not to follow through with it.
On that particular issue, Deb, in particular, I made the exact same assumption you did. We had Chris Cotta there, we had Bill Vieira there, we had Donna there. So I assume that the conversation was going to be had with the DPW about the retroactive assent, if you will, and then B, the determination of, gee, did they want to entertain that? As it relates specifically to that, on Saturday, I did something that was, fortunately, I stopped soon enough. I have a large yard trailer. I go to the dump with regular branches and such, and I did a branch run on Saturdays, and I started down there with I had intended to use my van, which has higher ground clearance. I stuck my nose down with my car and I stopped. And then I walked down to the beach, blocking the passageway because I figured no one else was coming down because I wanted to see what was down there. Indeed, my thought had been, if I go down there with my trailer, can I turn it around? And if not, I'm gonna have to back it up, which would have thrill. And it's impressive, A, how narrow it is, and B, interesting to see what is down there. I found it interesting to be down at the beach end of it. And when I was coming back towards where my car was, right there at the beach end, there's actually a large area that had been macadam, had been blacktopped. It's probably, a lot of it's busted up on the road surface, but there's an area I think that might have very well been paved almost down to the beach at one point in time. That's my speculation. As we know, Paul Duarte can speak more articulate.
Yeah, many years ago.
It was paved. It was paved all the way down, Paul. And then
I don't know about all the way down. I don't remember that, but I remember being a paved area at the end.
Okay.
There was a paved road that went over the island itself, and you can still see remnants of that. We're talking about Jacques Island still, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen any old paving on the road itself, but on the island, it was definitely paved, and apparently there was a World War II tank up there and a cannon.
Oh, wow.
Not exactly a wildlife sanctuary back then.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean,
Actually, the water is really shallow there.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah,
shallow.
so a boat ranch, well, maybe kayaks and dinghies, but
small boats and selective launch times. It's the issue. But I agree. The issue at hand at this moment with regards to this item is that generally, Deb, in the past, when we decided the commission wanted certain things done, there'd be a motion that I write a letter to whatever entity. In that instance, because we had the attention that we had with Bill Vieira and Donna Cook, we made all the same assumptions that those people we're going to reach out to were right there and heard it. Nothing I gather has happened, so it's a matter of public record. We should probably, usually we did in the past, follow up with correspondence that would go out.
Well, I think that they would like to have somebody from the Harbor Commission present at the meetings when my understanding from my conversation with Donna is that they would like for us to almost put it on their agenda and present it to the town council and not ask them to present it on our behalf, so that we have a presence there and can answer questions and can be a part of the discussion and not rely on them to speak on our behalf. Maybe I'm not saying it quite right, but when I followed up with was what I've been doing after our meetings. I have to send the motions and the vote count to the clerk's office. And I've just been using that kind of as an action list to make sure that we're not leaving things undone. And I send that to Donna and Bill, and they came back and said, hey, this isn't what we're supposed to be doing. We need you guys to follow through on this and bring it to us as a council.
Okay.
So to be there at the meetings when they're discussing it and to put it on the agenda to make sure that they are.
Well, the way we did it with the dock is Bill and Bruce and I communicated quite a bit. And then Bill put it on the agenda. And then Bruce and I were on the Zoom call when he put it up. And so we did present it to the council.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I think they were looking for the same thing with the anything else to follow too.
Right.
Use that as a model.
Right.
Okay. Point well made. Back to Deb again. Her base AMP report, CRMC changes to the notification process, floating gear guidelines, discussion, possible vote. You're on, Deb.
Okay, so you all got a copy of this. I don't remember the exact date, but at the last BaySAMP working group, CRMC unveiled the administrative revisions to the aquaculture application process. You know, I won't read that to you. You guys all have it. I think it's encouraging and a step in the right direction. And, you know, while it's really does not encompass all the changes that I think are really important, it's at least some validation that CRMC is listening and maybe responds to some pressure from the public. So it's a step in a direction. And you know, it also says that they've said that the municipalities can notice the way they see fit. And, you know, we're going to have to discuss this when we talk about the aquaculture chapter. You know, how much is the town going to be willing to do? Or is the town going to be willing to advertise in the paper or start an email list to supplement, or I don't think supplement's the right word, to kind of like pick up where CRMC's notification falls short. So.
Or to augment, you know.
Augment, thank you.
I'm questioning, the 1,000-foot notice, 1,000 feet from where? 1,000 feet from the edge of their proposed field, or 1,000 feet from
the boundary, from the outside boundary of the lease. So CRMC has a siting tool now. And I think, I don't know if I put the link to it on here or not. If not, it's available. So the siting tool allows applicants and the public to map a lease, and then it automatically generates a 1,000-foot radius outside of any of the exterior markers of the lease, of the outside boundary. And then it generates a list of property owners, and not just riparian property owners, inland owners as well within that 1,000-foot boundary. It also generates a list of other leaseholders and I think businesses as well. And so then the applicant can print that out and bring it to the municipality to confirm contacts. The one thing that I don't think that CRMC specified the method of notification. If they did, I missed it. And so I'm not sure if it has to be in writing or in person, or what qualifies as notification. However, that wasn't clear to me. But the mapping is fantastic.
A registered letter.
Sorry, Paul?
It's not a registered letter?
I don't think they specified. I'll have to go back and confirm.
The problem with just from a perspective of this is a segue, I apologize, but from a standpoint of registered letters, I'm not sure they do them anymore.
They do.
Do they registered? They do certified letters.
Oh,
not sure they do
what's
registered.
the difference?
Certified letter means that anybody can sign off on it. Registered means if I send a registered letter to Deb Hagan has to sign off on it. And the other is a, the good old fashioned certified mail return receipt requested. Anybody can sign off on that. And in Rhode Island, if you send somebody a certified letter, and it comes back to you, all you've demonstrated is that they did not get the notice. The Supreme Court came down on that, and bad cases make bad law, and that's what happened in that instance. But and it's expensive. It's about $4 a pop. In Rhode Island, in the United States, and you're entitled to the presumption by U.S. Postal Service that a letter that is not returned to you was received by an individual. Now, obviously, some people go south for the winter and that kind of thing, and that's one of those. Well, you should have your mail forwarded, so you can only go so far. But I I'm glad to see that, CRMC definitely is hearing what we're saying. I mean, the fact we had the 3 guys there that night was astounding. And glad to see that they're following up on it, Deb, from your report. But yeah.
Yeah, and I think the other thing to mention too, the floating gear guidelines are interesting. They're not regulation, they're guidelines. And so it says that, that floating gear should be a minimum of 750 feet from the nearest residential structure. And that it's discouraged in type 1 waters. They're listed out here. The notes that I gave you came directly from the PowerPoint presentation that they did. So you can see what they're saying there. But it's those floating gear guidelines have been around for a long time, I believe, but I really only became aware of them very recently. And so it's kind of nice to see them kind of put forth in a way that's public and meaningful.
So they're saying 750 feet from a structure.
Structure, not property line.
Not from a property line.
Or
Okay.
a boundary, yeah.
Interesting.
Or the mean high water mark is probably what it would be otherwise, but.
No, well, it's from a discussion perspective. Again, this is a bit of a segue. We're not taking action on it, but we're discussing your report. People down in Winnacimmet, there are a number of houses that are down much closer to the water than I am. For instance, my house from the structure of my house to the water's edge is about 400 feet.
Mm-hmm.
So theoretically, they could be 350 feet off the beach.
Yeah, which is nothing, right? It's nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My boat's more than that off the beach. It'd be kind of interesting to have my boat moored right in the center of it. Certainly I'd be either accusing or resigning, right? So I could be complaining. It is an issue. My position here on the commission is as speak on behalf of waterfront owners about how far things are and whatnot, and the adequacy of notice. So I'm glad to see they're going in the right direction. And from the comment that was made tonight by Mr. By Bohanger, evidently they are developing better notification. And I guess they probably wanted to be better neighbors than they felt they were required to be, which is kind of nice to see.
Yeah, I mean, it's what we're asking for, right? Is for the public to have an opportunity to be a part of the dialogue. I think it's great.
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot more fun to not spend a lot of money on engineering and development and find out things that are detrimental to your proposal early on the cheap, because it takes time and energy and money to design and build these things. And if you can find out where the problems are early on in the game, that's far better. And that's done by giving people a heads up, AKA notice.
Hey, Deb, I have a quick question. Why did I think that I heard that how they measured the 1,000 feet was from the center of the lease and not from the perimeter?
I thought it was from the perimeter. They did a demonstration, and I thought it was from the perimeter. I'll go back and check.
Okay. Because obviously if they go from the center of the lease, that would change it. That would diminish it even more.
It would. I'll check, Bill.
And if the lease is 500 feet offshore, then you're only going 500 feet inland. Because you're starting at that point 500 feet out.
Yeah, I mean, I knew that there are a lot of people who would like to see that 2,000 feet, 2,500 feet. I was surprised they went up to 1,000, to be honest.
Yeah, no, it's all good
500, yeah.
progress.
The interesting thing is that the CRMC's authority to affect the inland elements is only 200 feet from the inland edge of the coastal feature. And that's a biologically determined site. It can be a cliff or an event of a marsh or low-lying properties. It's the nature of the soil that determines where the coastal feature stops. And then they only go a grand total 225 feet further in. That's their authority. So it's interesting that they're saying to give notice to 1,000 feet, but the notice from where? That's the $94 question.
Okay, I'll reach out to Ben and ask him directly.
And that's still in development, isn't it?
No, I think that the changes they talked about at the last meeting are what they're doing. Those are the changes. Because
Oh.
they could be made administratively and they wanted to implement them quickly. That's my understanding.
I'm not sure it can be made administratively or not.
Well, there was one thing that they showed during the presentation where they felt like this fit into the red book. I don't have it written down here. Let me reach out to Ben and get back to you.
Yeah, I'd like to hear that and see that. If there's
I'll
a
send you
link
the
to
link, Bruce.
the presentation so I could watch it, because here's why my point is. We're in the body of administrative law here. There are, ordinances and the laws of the state that the legislatures pass, and most of what we deal with every day in our lives is actually administrative law. Regulatory agencies like coastal, like DEM, like the DMV, dealing with laws that affect us. DMV is probably a bad example, but other entities. And administrative changes, scheduling, when they meet, minor adjustments, those are administrative. Anything that has a substantive effect on someone's legal rights and could affect their legal rights, those are not. Those are rulemaking. And every now and then you'll see I forward something on to you that, the coastal says this is rulemaking going on, and I send it to you and I say, for anyone that's of interest, and more often not something pretty arcane and not anywhere near our interest. But those are rulemaking procedures, and the reason why they have them is it goes before the full council. It's not just the staff, and the staff is very talented people. But sometimes it's helpful to have the public's input on it. That's why these are rules, these are laws, just like all the laws that are passed by our legislatures are public. You can go up and participate as a member of the public to observe and listen and see what's going on if you're so inclined. And so their changes to the Red Book, to rules that affect someone's substantive rights, are not merely administrative. Those are full rulemaking obligations, which has a greater burden of stepping forward, more steps to go through.
Well, my understanding could be incorrect. It very well could be. So
Yeah.
let me, I have the link to it all. I'll send it out to you guys tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, thank you for following through on that. I apologize for my lousy handwriting at the top of the page, but I was like, what is this? And I realized, oh, that's Deb's report.
Sorry. I'll put a heading on next time.
Yeah. All right, item number 6, riparian mooring, specific whether or not a registered vessel is required or not. From the mooring ordinances and the town charter, riparian owners are allowed up to 4 moorings. They're entitled to 1. They're allowed up to 4. You're supposed to have a boat registered to a mooring you have, but the regulations also provide that you can have a guest mooring for which you pay $100, because we have a staggered fee system. It's the was one of those things that was, all right, if you want to have a second mooring with no boat on it, you can have a guest mooring, pop $100 on, but can you have a mooring without a boat? What do people feel?
Well, can I?
What, one
Go ahead,
get
Deb.
mooring?
Deb, go ahead.
So, I mean, I put this on the agenda. We put in 2 moorings 8 or 9 years ago. And we were permitted the moorings and they've been permitted annually. And we've never had boats on them. I understand in a mooring field how you wouldn't want someone taking up a mooring if they don't have a boat when there's a wait list, but there's no competition for this particular location. And the fact that they've been renewed annually for so long, and I'm not the only one in the situation. There are other folks in the pond in particular who have moorings and don't have boats. And so that's my question, since this has kind of come up recently in discussions, revolving around the aquaculture.
No, you're on the pond side, Nanaquacket Pond, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And we use our moorings for other things. Like, the kids have a swim platform, they'll go and tie up to it. It's almost like, and boats the motorboats don't come between the moorings and the shore, or the boaters who are smart don't, because there are rocks there. And so it kind of creates like a little swim area for us personally. I don't know what other folks do with theirs. But so I'm throwing it out there as kind of a, to get an answer to this.
Mhm.
Clint has made some good points about this issue, and he feels like the riparian mooring is connected to the property and it's non-transferable, whereas a boat is something that, as he said, you could be in between boats, your boat could sink or whatever, and that doesn't mean you lose your mooring. If you sell your property, the mooring goes with it. So he feels like, and I agree with him, that you shouldn't have to have a registered boat. Ideally, yes, but it shouldn't be a rule. And I think the town specifies that you have to have a registered boat to at least one of the 2 moorings. And maybe, I'm sure Tyler knows better, or knows the answer to that. Are you there, Tyler?
Yeah, I'm here. So as Bruce was saying about the registered boat, if you had a boat, a mooring, and a registered boat, then you could have a guest mooring because you already have a registered boat to 1 mooring.
Right.
The issue comes up when you ask for 4 moorings and you don't even own a boat.
Right.
Or
Well,
if you want 2 moorings, 3 moorings, and you don't have a boat or intentions of having a boat.
So to start from scratch, if you are a riparian landowner and you want a mooring, you have to have a boat before, like let's say you have a boat on order, or
So
it's being like,
my
how do you-
understanding, if you're riparian, you can have a mooring without a boat, but if you ask for another mooring, you have to have a registered boat for that first mooring. So your second mooring would turn into a guest mooring.
Okay.
That sounds fair.
Yeah, that sounds fair.
So you can have 1 mooring without a boat, but then if you want a
Correct.
second mooring, you have to have a registered vessel.
Correct.
Can there be some sort of,
that'd be considered a guest mooring.
yeah, could there be some kind of grace period on that for the people who have been receiving permits annually?
Sounds like it'd be grandmothered in.
Yeah, or
Yeah,
intention is to get a boat.
I think it
when-
should be grandfathered in, but it should also be updated in the harbor management plan
Yeah,
that we make this new ordinance and make it very clear.
so
There are
grandfather,
also-
clarify it. the
My
future.
my partner and I my partner, Matt Slepko, lives over in East Providence on the water. And he was getting told, no, you can't have he wanted to have a swim float. And it was being knocked around the office in typical lawyer fashion. We said, okay, someone's telling us this is the rule. You can't have a swim float. You can only have a boat. Has anyone ever read the book, Tom Sawyer?
I've heard something about swim floats, but because they're a hazard, there's no light on it. There's no marker on it.
There's no light on my boat either. It's on a mooring.
Yeah, I know, but it's
if I
not
tie
flat.
up,
I mean, if you were going along at 30 miles an hour and you hit a swim platform, I mean, it'd be more likely than you'd hit a swim platform than you would another boat.
Absolutely.
It'd be hard to see. I thought, I don't know where I heard it, but there's something about tying up docks. Something about tying docks to moorings. I don't know if
that was because docks are unregistered. You can't register a dock.
Yeah. Well, for clarification, ours is a rigid inflatable that the kids take out when they're using it, and then they bring it back when they're done. It doesn't stay on the mooring. It's more like a raft.
That's a different thing altogether.
that's a boat that's used like a raft.
It's a raft that's used more than the boat.
Dave Stewart can tell you about boats that become rafts or swim platforms. They used to be called Avon inflatables, and you flip them over and they become great platforms.
Very versatile. Very versatile.
Many a fun hour bouncing off of one as a youngster. I'll send you a note, Deb.
Okay.
Anyways, next, the concept of moorings in the mooring field in type 1 waters, where there are mooring fields established, how many of the moorings are there in some areas in riparian, and then the correspondence from Ben. I think that's a harbor management issue, because I think we have, now we're going to do the harbor management plan of I think we want to not only look at the operational element of the harbor management plan, but also the structural elements of it. By that, I mean our harbor management mooring fields, because decades ago, Dave, our senior member here, and I don't know, Paul, you might have been aware of this as well. The Nanaquacket Pond used to be type 2 waters.
Right.
And it has on it type 3 applications, Evelyn's and Don's Marina.
Right.
Yet those are supposedly type 1 water. Something occurred, and it may be accurate, may not be accurate, that caused a senior official in the CRMC and or the town here to want to not have a series of docks built along Nanaquacket Road that evidently were applied for. And so out of the blue, Save the Bay and CRMC decided to change Nanaquacket Pond into type 1 waters, which mean, by the way, Deb, there's no water skiing, no ski-doos, there's no fishing boats, there's no type 3 activities on it, like going to the Marina or going to Evelyn's, and all of which are completely and utterly ignored here. At one point, we made a motion and I carried it to the town administrator that we basically divide Nanaquacket Pond in half, somewhere either, I've forgotten if it was Pond View or if it was North Court, the extension of either of those roads across Nanaquacket Pond would create a boundary. And to the south of that boundary would be type 1 waters, the shallow end of Nanaquacket Pond. To the north of that would be type 2 waters, Evelyn's, and the Marina would be identified as have a marina area or a boundary that was type 3, recognizing the reality of what's going on. And the debate would then be, okay, what do you do with regards to the boundary of Nanaquacket Pond that's north of that And especially if you look at some maps, it's got a coastal bluff quality to it, the marsh quality. And that's part of what they're trying to protect. That said, I've been told by friends that they got permission from coastal to make walkover structures so they could get, in essence, a dinghy dock. So I think I agree with you full-heartedly that we got to address mooring fields in type 1 waters and maybe address that some of the broad brush strokes that were taken towards the type 1 water designations in Tiverton don't apply to
Well, but it's
going on.
beyond Nanaquacket Pond, right? Because it's also the mooring field off of North Court and the one down off of Jacques Island. And so I think that ahead of when we are going to talk about it, I feel like we just need to work with either Ben, if he's our contact now to deal with this, or if it's Kevin Cute, just for some options of what they're going to see as reasonable solutions, and whether it's them getting grandfathered in, and again establishing how many of those moorings are riparian moorings, which are allowed in type 1 waters. So I'd like to, whenever we are going to tackle this, I'd like to be prepared with a little bit more information from CRMC. And, if it's okay, if I talk to Ben directly, and then relay that information, or Bruce, if you're the one who should do that.
No, you can, I understand. As chairman here, and by all means, I'm very tempted to put that down on the next agenda as elections, because every time in the past when I put it down, all the past guys that were all like, no elections allowed. I only see myself as put together the agenda. I try to take notes and carry things forward and keep moving things forward. And I address legal issues and I speak to the town, but I mean, anyone can speak to anybody. You can't make commitments to say this will happen, but you can certainly gather information, bring it back. Don't hesitate to do that, please.
Okay.
No.
Bruce, I have one.
My memory is that back when we were talking about having that type 1, type 2 boundary line,
right,
we did communicate with CMRC, discussed it with them, got at least a nod, if not a formal approval.
That's right. We got, and we had to get the town to back it up. And we now have, I think we have a really good administration right now. Not that we had bad ones we have had bad ones. We've had
bad ones, yes.
We've had some good ones, and I think we have a really good one right now.
Bruce, I have a question.
Yes.
My understanding was that in type 1 waters, you can't put a mooring, if you're grandfathered in, if it's there now, you're grandfathered in. I don't think you can put a mooring now in type 1 water.
And it's my understanding you're not supposed to add moorings to a type 1 water unless you're a riparian owner. As a riparian owner, you have a right to have at least one.
You could. All right. Well, that's good. All right.
But the other issue is that with the surrender of the mooring, if you will, if someone leaves, they're remembering that you own your tackle, your weight and your chain, and you have permission to put it in. You can sell that weight and chain, but you can't sell the spot. So when you abandon your spot because you've given up your boat, if you're not a riparian owner, that mooring spot's supposed to matriculate and be gone, which would mean that overall head count of moorings in certain areas would go down, because there are detrimental effects of moorings on the bottom that people that have studied this can go on forever about, in terms of, if I have a smoking sou'wester out and my boat's on it, that chain's gonna get drawn out. It's gonna bash up the bottom where it's getting drawn, and then the wind spins around and comes out of the northwest. Whichever way the boat swings, that chain's gonna get dragged and bash up the bottom. And that's their point: is the mooring chain tends to bash up the bottom, I guess. But
Whatever.
that's
And
their complaint about moorings in type 1 waters.
Now, does the type 1 waters go all the way down to Fogland too?
Type 1 waters in Tyler start in my neighbor's 2 doors over his yard. Yeah,
So
my
it
dock.
would affect all the moorings all the way down to Fogland.
That's the point. That's the point. We have an enormous amount of our moorings infrastructure in type 1 waters.
Yeah, I think I'd also like to reach out to someone on Newport's Harbor Commission, because isn't Brenton Cove all type 1 also right along the shore? And there are
Yes.
lots of moorings there.
Yeah, and I'm on the waterfront committee at New York Yacht Club, and we're just
Okay.
discussed that this week. And it is type 1 water. Anything west of our dock is type 1. Anything east is type 2. And it really isn't right, because there are Sail Newport is there, which is very it's not commercial, but it's a very active waterfront. Then you've got Bonnie Crest that has docks there. And then you've got Beacon Rock, Brian Kuna's old house that has docks. So it really is kind of, it originally was type 1. It's questionable now under the new rules if it really still is type 1, because we want to try to expand our docks to the west a little bit. So it's a kind of a hybrid, but right now it is type 1. You're right.
Okay. Do you have a contact, someone that I could talk to about from the Newport Harbor Commission, or whatever body governs their waters? I assume they have a harbor commission.
They do. They meet the second Thursday of every month at the Maritime Center. The girl named Sarah is the girl who runs the office on the waterfront there, right on right at where the ferries come in, right near Bowen Wharf, whatever. And Harbormaster is a new guy. He's excellent. And I would call them, just call Newport Harbormaster and ask.
Okay. All right, will do. Thank you.
Sarah is the lady who answers the phone.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Okay. Yeah, in terms of type water types, I mean, changes can be made to them. And it's a process. I'm not sure exact process is exact how. A friend of mine, former colleague and former client, now retired, Peter Wilbur, worked at Roger Williams University and worked with CRMC in the town to get to where the dock that was originally a biological research dock, that they started wanting to use it as a dock for their sailing program. They got a band of that area changed to type 2 waters, whereas it had been all Mount Hope Bay was type 1 waters. At least that portion of it was. So, I mean, I think your point is well made, Deb, and maybe we should be talking to, at this juncture, more active communication with Coastal in terms of, all right, we have legality and reality, and legality, technically, the current legal status is this is type 1 water, no moorings. And the reality is, A, we have a lot of moorings here and it hasn't stopped the earth, and B, Nantucket Pond being the most glaring issue. Reality is it's used and you're not going to stop it. You're not going to stop people going in with their runabouts and their ski-doos and such.
Yeah,
and
I don't
using
think anyone wants to stop it.
What's that?
Yeah, no one wants to stop it, right? I mean, it's a protected place where people have fun, so it's it's great.
Well, the public, the human beings that are part of the environment don't want to stop it.
Yeah.
But from a legal perspective, from a type 1 water enforcement, Tyler should be out there and, arresting people and throwing out tickets and everything else if he was a powerhead. We'd have a lot of fun with that, wouldn't we? So that's what drives me nuts, is when I look at the reality versus legality. The legality says, no, this shouldn't be going on. The reality is it does, and you're not going to stop it. So maybe we should change the laws a little bit, the regulation. But enough of my ranting. Anybody else have anything? We have the Harbormaster mooring status report. How are they going, Tyler?
Still good. They're still coming in. I don't have an exact number how many, but I got a big pile here that I already put in the system. And then the boat status is getting ready for the spring, getting some upgrades done to it, some general maintenance, and it'll be in for April.
Great. I think from a boat status standpoint, Tyler, it might be not a bad idea to take Donna Cook out and Bill Vieira out to show them what our waterfront looks like.
Oh, Bill Vieira already spent, I think it was like 4 or 5 hours on the weekend out there.
Oh, did he?
Yep, I showed him all the waterfront, showed him all the moorings.
Mm-hmm.
We spent most of the day out there showing him around.
Good. Good. Any other comments? Yep.
I move we adjourn.
Anybody else?
I second.
Second that.
Okay, I don't think I need a roll call vote. All those in favor?